Welcome to Take Two with Freddy. Real talk about second chances, real life, and the power of rewriting your story. I'm Freddy Freundlich, entrepreneur, mentor, storyteller, and here's the deal. If I didn't walk it, I don't talk it. Each week, we'll spend about 20 minutes laughing, reflecting, and hopefully walking away a little more inspired than when we came in. So something hit me today. I was reading the newspaper and I got to thinking about politicians. And no, this is not a political show, so please stick with me. What grabbed my attention was how some politicians seem to stay in the same lane for decades, while others suddenly shift onto a completely different lane. And then you'll see those news clips, maybe from 20, 30 years ago, where they say one thing and today they're completely contradicting their former selves. This got me to wondering, is this a good or a bad thing? My feeling is it depends on where it's coming from. I find that there are people who have no real core beliefs, no ideals. They simply go where the wind blows. What's ever popular, whatever polls, well, this day, tomorrow, last week, whatever Tom, Dick, Sally, or Harry are shouting. And if that is the reason for their change, well, in my humble opinion, that person is a loser. But then there's the other kind of person, the one who changes because they genuinely grow, because they're willing to learn, and they do learn because life gives them experience, perspective, and wisdom. That kind of change, my friends, well, I believe that's a beautiful kind of change. When you're rooted in genuine beliefs and you're also open to growth, that usually leads to something good. Not just for you, but for the people around you, and even eventually all of society. Not always, but generally speaking. But here's the catch. This only works if you're open to growth. If you put yourself in a little box and refuse to acknowledge other possibilities, if you cling to your opinions simply because they're familiar and comfortable, that's dangerous. Dangerous to you, your friends, and everyone around you. So guys, what I'd like to propose is this. The ideal person, politician or not, is someone who has core beliefs that come from deep inside, but who is always open to listening and growing. And again, this isn't a political show. This is a show about second chances and your take two. This is a show all about you. So why do I bring politicians up at all? Because, believe it or not, they're human, just like you and me. They put their pants on one leg at a time. And sometimes we can learn from them. And the truth is, sometimes they can learn from us. The lesson I want to take from them today is this. Are we growing or are we just drifting with the crowd? This question reminds me of one of my mentors, a gentleman by the name of Zig Ziglar. Some of you old-timers in business or sales probably know the name. Zig, although he passed away in 2012, he was probably one of the greatest motivational speakers and sales trainers of the 20th century. I first encountered Zig, I think over 40 years ago. He was speaking at the Superdome in New Orleans. There had to be over 40,000 people in attendance. And there I was, way up in the nosebleed seats, young and just at the beginning of my career. For those of you who don't know, the nosebleed seats are those way up in the cloud seats, the ones that are the cheapest ones in the building. At any rate, I had heard Zig on tapes, I read his books, but this was the first time I got to see him live, and I was excited. And at the end of his speech, He did his classic closing. He would drop to one knee, look out at the massive audience, and say, and I'm paraphrasing here, yes, you, I mean you. If you will do what you need to do, I will see you. Yes, I mean you at the very top. I will never forget that moment. Over 40,000 people in that building, and somehow he made it feel like he was talking directly to me. That moment has stayed with me throughout my life, through both the good and the bad. It has shaped a lot of my growth. And over the years, I've had the privilege of meeting Zig several times. I can tell you guys, he was the same man off stage as he was on stage, a genuinely good man. Today, if you look up his videos or tapes, they may seem old-fashioned because he came from a different era. He started as a door-to-door salesman, something that barely exists today. But his teachings, those are timeless. One of his signature stories was the hand pump. What he would do is he would walk on stage many times with an old-fashioned water pump. Now, it was not connected to anything. And he'd use it to make a point about life. And when I say life, it could be anything: business, finances, love, health, whatever you want. Now, back before modern plumbing was literally everywhere, there were many places, especially in rural areas, where you got your water through a well. So you had to dig a well. And then you brought up the water by pumping it by hand. Now, the deeper the well, the cleaner the water was. But on the other hand, the deeper the well, the longer it took for the water to rise. So Zig would get on stage and he'd be speaking and he would stand there pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping. And as he was pumping, he'd explain all the success, all the opportunity, all the love, all the health you want, it's already there, just like the water which is deep underground. He would quote Napoleon Hill, another great motivationalist from the early 20th century, who said, if you can think it, you can achieve it, which means creation is already done. Your job is simply to work the pump. But that's a big deal. You know, a person can own land sitting on one of the biggest gold reserves in the world, but if they never dig, it's worthless to them. And it's the same thing with your potential. So as Zig would pump, he'd remind us that the water is rising inch by inch, even though we can't see it. And he'd say, I know you want to quit. You're pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping, and nothing's happening. But if you stop now, you might be literally 1 inch away from this water. And if you do stop pumping, the water will slide all the way down, and you'll have to start pumping all over again. So we continue pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping, and eventually the water would start to flow. Now, once this water flows, you don't have to pump hard anymore. You still have to pump, but you just make sure it's lightly and consistently. And then what do you have? You have the sweetest, cleanest, freshest, most delicious water you could ever imagine. Remember, the deeper the hole, the better quality of the water is. And my friends, this analogy, which I love, is honestly what Take Two with Freddy is all about. Every one of us wants something specific and something general. And what we want in general is that sweet, delicious, clean, fresh water. We want consistency. We want joy. We want purpose. We want a life that feels good, really good. And you know what? Getting it is simple. Not necessarily easy, but simple. We just make everything more complicated than it needs to be. You know what the secret is? The magic is? You dig the well, you prime the pump, you pump, and once the water starts flowing, you don't let it go. It's that simple. Now, most people will never enjoy this sweet water, either at all or for very long. And it's not because they're lazy and not because they're incapable. Most people work very hard. They dig ditches, have jobs where they work overtime or have more than one job. People do tend to work hard. And many of them will end up digging the ditch. Some will even prime the pump. But at the end of the day, only about 20% will even start pumping. But pumping takes time. And unfortunately, we let a lot of negative doubts creep in. Another phrase that Zig coined was stinking thinking. And we will start to tell ourselves things like, Joe tried this, didn't work for him. My spouse says I'm wasting my time. I got to start looking for a real job. Tom, Dick, and Sally says this will never happen. And then eventually we quit. Sometimes when we're only 1 inch away. So at the end of the day, maybe 10% keep pumping long enough to see the fruits of their labor, the first drops of water. And they get to taste it and enjoy it, and they're in heaven. But then, unfortunately, even then, half of them will eventually quit. The work is so easy, it just means just keep on pumping lightly. But they'll quit. And they'll quit because they've gotten complacent. They forgot what it took to get there. But most of all, they stopped wanting to grow. If you never want to grow old, not chronologically, but spiritually and mentally, you gotta keep pumping, because pumping and growing is the exact same thing. So I want to ask you folks something. Where are you in that journey? Are you still digging? Are you pumping? Are you right on the verge of a breakthrough, but you're thinking about quitting? Or have you let the pump go and need to take two? Well, most of us, I believe, who are listening to this podcast have already dug the well. And we're just not pumping, which is great news because really, digging the well is the hardest part. And that takes a long time. But if you've been around a while, you've dug the well. Now all you need to do is prime and pump because the water is still there. Always. That sweet, delicious, clean, fresh water. It's always there for everyone. Everyone has this opportunity to get to that water. You just got to be willing to keep pumping it until it starts to flow. And once it flows, just keep pumping it lightly. And here's the beautiful part. Even if you quit, even if you walked away from the pump, you can come back anytime you want. If the well is already dug, it's still dug. Just prime it and pump again. I can't emphasize enough, folks, this is not rocket science, but it does require belief, persistence, and growth. Well, guys, let me leave you with this. Life will give you as many second chances as you are willing to claim. There is always more water in the well. There is always another pump, and there's always another take two. Just remember, the sweetest water isn't for the smartest among us or the luckiest among us. It's for the ones who keep pumping. And between you and me, each and every one of us can keep one pumping. So have a wonderful week. Keep growing. And if this did anything for you, please share with a friend. Please like, please subscribe. And I'll see you. And yes, I mean you at the top. This is Freddy, and this has been another episode of Take Two with Freddy.